After the root cause of your relationship with money comes the purge. You've excavated, you've gone through all of the deep, dark crevices within your cave, within your own underworld, and now comes the healing. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Katerina, and welcome to part 2, the Purge of the Money series that I am finishing off this year with. I am a shadow guide. I work with astrology and shadow work to help you go from chaos to clarity, from ego-led to soul-led. If you are interested in working with me, then my services are down below. I have one spot left still for November. I know it's the end of November basically, so I have one spot left for this month, and then December I only have one spot available. So if you feel this pull towards understanding your core wounds on such a deep level, then like I said, all my information is down below. So if you've watched the part 1 of this series, then you will know that was the root, that was the deep underworld, that was the core wounds, understanding what core wounds are, having the realization of when they imprinted in your life, working with astrology to figure out what those core wounds are. That was the first step. You cannot go through all of these steps without getting to the root cause, getting to those core wounds. This part is the purge, the healing phase. This is something that is not comfortable. The purge is an uncomfortable space. The purge is where you almost feel like your identity cracking because you know why you do certain things. Once you see, you cannot unsee. I have said this through the duration of my channel. I have said, once you see your core wounds and once you see why you do them, you cannot unsee that shit. That is the truth unfolding. And a lot of these truths are based off wounds. A lot of the reasons why we do things are a projection or a trauma response. We are basically going through life living our wound, and this phase is so necessary, but it does come with a lot of realism. It does come with a lot of crying, a lot of purging. You're releasing your old identity. This is what this phase is about. This is the phase where a lot of old patterns, they feel different. When you see why you do certain things, when you're going through this healing purge, you really do look at yourself with a different lens. And therefore the patterns that you would repeat when you were in your cloud and didn't know, those will feel a bit icky. Let's just say you seek external validation a lot of the time. This phase, when you seek external validation again, can leave this like icky bitterness at the end of it, because you now know why. Before it was just a fun little thing. Before you were just sharing something because you wanted to share it. But now when you share something that happened to you with someone, or something that you discovered, or whatever it is, now you realize why you tell them. Because you don't validate yourself. You don't think your reaction is enough. You need to outsource your joy. So this is why I say this is the uncomfortable phase, not only because there are a lot of emotional truths that you have to face. There's a lot of purging through somatics, through tears, but also it's uncomfortable because you're really understanding how much you have neglected yourself. how much you've relied on others for validation, for gratification, how much you've put yourself last in a lot of circumstances, how much your overworking persona, the thing that you walk around being like, yeah, no, I work really hard, that's who I am, it is actually a confidence wound. And you uncovering that, you realizing that, that unveiling moment, you know, last week we just went through all of that heaviness from Scorpio new moon, from all the unmeshing, the entanglement, the secrets. We just went through all of that. This is where that energy from last week, if you felt it, I certainly did, will be like a mirror of what you can expect. A lot of internal shifts in the way that you view yourself, because now you know the truth. And I know that can be scary. I know a lot of people avoid this because they don't want to face those truths, but you have to go through the underworld to get to the other side. So if you want that deep financial freedom, if you want the life that you desire so deeply, if you want to not get triggered by so many things, and if you want to attract the right partner for you, your person, you have to do this. So we're going to go through Chiron, because Chiron is probably the best one that could guide you through this healing phase. When you look at someone's charts, you can really tell, you know, everything is pointing to the same direction. It all mirrors that Chiron wound, because a lot of the placements, you're in the wounded, and because that Chiron mirrors that wound, that's where you could easily stay in that wounded version of yourself. So for instance, if you've got Venus in the first house and then you have Chiron in the ninth house, or whatever house Chiron is in, would mirror back to that wounded version of Venus in the first house. You could be super confident but still not set boundaries because you have Chiron in the seventh house, for instance. It does show the theme of the wound that you are fearing and the healing of the wound that you need to face. And it really does show you, like, why the wound that you have became whole, like why it appeared. Chiron will show you that wound, and it will be where that wound formed. But also with that, and with the beauty of astrology, it will show you the healing that you need. So I'm going to go through some Chiron placements, and I'm going to show you how to use those Chiron placements as a way to do your shadow work. So if you have Chiron in the second house, you will naturally have this wound where you feel like you need to prove yourself, you need to prove your worth before you could even get anything back. And even then, when you get something back, you still don't feel worthy of it. This wound leads to possibly you not asking for help, not because you don't want it, but because you feel like it might make you look weak and you haven't done it yourself, you haven't done enough. It is a wound that is complex because it is the wound of Venus too, like it's Venus's house, so it may mirror a lot of Venus wounds as well. But if you have Chiron in the second house, really think about your tie to how much you earn, how many possessions you have, um, even like how productive you are, how much work you do. It's all about you doing more to prove your worth. So that's a really great place to start when it comes to shadow work. You can find each house meaning, like what the house means, so either really broadly or quite deeply, either on YouTube or on Pinterest. You can find what that house means, and then with Chiron there, just do the wound of that. I feel like I'm saying it quite simply, but it's, third house, the way you communicate, your intellect. If you have Chiron there, you probably do feel like if you have Chiron there, the wound of that would be that you fear speaking, you fear using your voice, you fear communicating, you might not think that you're smart enough, you might feel like you need to learn more. So start there. Start with either memories of you feeling like your voice was shut down, or feeling like your worth was tied to how much you earn or how much you possess. Were your parents very materialistic? Start there. If you have Chiron in the 8th house, you have betrayal wounds. You fear merging. You fear, again, I think I said this in the last video, but you fear giving yourself to someone. You fear vulnerability for fear of betrayal or abandonment. If you have Chiron in the 10th house, you feel like you've never, like, you need to work more. You feel like you're not worthy of rest until you've proven yourself in your career. You might feel like you're climbing a ladder that never stops. You may feel like you neglect your home life for your career, but you also may sabotage success. You may feel like you fear visibility because you don't think that you're ready, you don't think that you are good enough to be seen in your career. You could be overworking like a lot. You could feel like you constantly need to prove yourself in your career, but then really struggle to accept promotions or accept things that elevate yourself, because you subconsciously believe elevation comes with visibility, and visibility is a dangerous place for me. I'm not worthy of being visible. Chiron in the 7th house can also be abandonment. You can also choose unavailable partners. But Chiron in the 7th house can also be like you lose yourself in partners. You feel like their worries become your worries, and you kind of merge into this person who really doesn't know who they are without a partner, and they don't feel like they're strong enough, or they might not feel like they might just feel this natural wound within relationships, so they like tug harder, that they might feel like they need to hold on to that person more, because without it, who are they? So it's like a double-edged sword. They fear abandonment sometimes and maybe cling on because of that, but they also cling on to it because they fear being alone, because who are they? They don't know who they are. Now, if you put the sign on this, it adds a flavour to it. So I'm going to give you an example, which would be Chiron in the 9th in Gemini, say for instance. Chiron in the 9th is you feel like you might follow mentors. You might feel like you believe people because you feel like you don't know enough. Like, how could you speak about this topic because you just don't feel like you know enough of that information? You feel like you can't speak. Now, with Gemini, it completely comes to your intellect and your communication, because Gemini is ruled by Mercury. So you might just feel like you have maybe like wild ideas, or maybe you're quite youthful in the way that you think. You're like, oh, why can't things be different? Why can't things be better? Let's change it. And because it's a wound, and that's like a beautiful aspect, and that's like the healing of it, is like being open, speaking about your spiritual views, your expansive views. But the wound there is saying like, oh, I don't know enough, I'm not educated enough to speak on this topic, I'm not educated enough to communicate my views. People will laugh at me, people will think I'm not good enough, or I don't know enough. What if I say something wrong? Now, how this ties into career and into financial abundance, that could totally be part of your career path. But because you have that wound there, you don't speak. You wait until you feel like you are really educated enough to speak on that topic. But you can speak while you educate yourself, but you don't. You need to wait until this perfect moment, and that perfect moment never comes up, because we are never like, we're always evolving, we're always learning. There's not a moment that you don't ever learn. I remember meeting this guy at pub once, and he was 80 years old. He was like 81, and he was a cardiologist, and he still every year, even though he was retired, didn't practice. He said, I love going to seminars and I love learning. And he would continue to go to new seminars about what he trained in for like 50 years. And he would still go because he was like, there's so much more information to know. And then sometimes he hosted seminars and spoke at those events. And, you know, that's a perfect example. It's like, there's never a moment where it's like full stop, I know as much as I can now. You're always learning, you're always evolving. So if you have Chiron in Gemini in the ninth house, speak. You have to push through that fear, but you also have to know like how that fear accumulates in your life. Do you remember moments where you were sitting around a table and you weren't communicating things because you didn't think that you knew enough about this topic? But then you go home and in your head and you're like, oh, I should have said that. Oh, but I knew that person, like what they were saying wasn't from like a recent thing, like that was from years ago, maybe it's changed. And instead you be quiet, you don't say anything, and you question it afterwards. Shadow work is about bringing up those moments and really thinking about why you did those things, and then thinking about what's different, like how can I change that. That's the purge process, is releasing that old version of yourself, releasing the old narratives that you had, that you think you're not good enough to speak on a topic, and then actively saying, okay, well, what's the worst that would happen if I spoke? Like, what's the worst? People would make fun of me. Okay, then what? Well, then I'd feel sad. Okay, then what? Well, then I'd probably try and prove myself in my learning. Okay, and then what? You're like, it's always like a dissecting, and this is why I said that underworld's perfect for shadow work and perfect for that analogy, because you are literally always going to the bottom no matter what. You're always dissecting, trying to get out every bit of information that you can in order to understand why you work the way you do. So using Chiron as your shadow work map really can help you. Just look at your Chiron placement, look at your look at the house it's in, look at the sign. It's a tool that I start with. I start with Chiron, and then I go back and I'm like, okay, what is Saturn trying to teach them? What is Pluto testing them on? And then I keep going. And eventually, when I've read the whole thing, they all do point in the same healing direction. They all do point to the same direction. For instance, like speaking their truth, communicating their desires. Desires, like communicating your deepest desires, is eighth house more, and maybe a little bit of fifth as well. Especially like if you have Lilith in your fifth, you might feel like you're not speaking your creative desires or your romantic desires. You may feel like you need to push that down. Anyway, if you want to start this astrology shadow work journey, then I really would recommend you starting with Chiron, because that is the foundation of your healing. That's the source of where everything might be, I don't want to say weaker, but why you might be acting from the wounded place of certain things when your Chiron is running that part of your wound. And the healing, again, is the opposite of the wounded version of that. Sixth house, again, if you've got Chiron in the sixth like me, you probably overgive a lot and you probably forget yourself to help others. The healing is setting boundaries for yourself, with yourself, which is the hardest thing to do. But it's about setting boundaries in the giving, and it's like, okay, how can I give to myself today first? Let me just turn my phone off, or let me put my phone on silent for like 20 minutes and I'll just sit and put a face mask on and read a bit of a book. That's healing that wound, and that's kind of the purge. It's like a mix of shadow work and acting. It's not fully embodiment, and we'll get to that later. But it's the, you know why you do certain things and you want to heal that. So you need to do the shadow work. But then also, how can you give yourself the love that you need through your Chiron placement would help you to embody that Chiron healing way more. So, whilst you're in the purge, you will feel emotionally triggered a lot. Out of nowhere, you just might, the littlest thing that someone says or someone does just would emotionally trigger you. And when you're in this healing phase, when you're in that purge, when you're doing the shadow work, you can naturally, and I definitely did, question myself in that moment, or I write it down on my notes app next to me. So I just say, like, someone said something, and I'll write what happened in my notes app and then have that be addressed that week within shadow work. And like I said, it took me a long time to figure out my communication style in shadow work, and it is 100% talking. I rarely write nowadays unless I want to like do some poetic journaling. I really do just talk. I talk to my phone, I do voice notes, or I dictate, and that's just the way that I do my shadow work now, because I've realized hearing the words come out of my mouth, I analyze them there, and then I'm like, oh wait, oh my goodness, that's like such a, like, that really comes from that. And then like, oh, maybe that's why I do that. And then I'll just keep, and I know that's not very explanatory, but that is the way that I am able to really work on the wounds and work through that shadow work. You just have to find your medium. You may feel just this sudden awareness of your patterns. And when I first realized that I deeply sought external validation, whenever I sought external validation and I didn't get it, I would come home and I'd feel really like down and I wouldn't know why. And then after a bit, and I was like, oh, when did I start to feel weird? When did I start to feel sad? It was that moment that I smiled at someone and they didn't smile back. Okay, so now I know that what I sought for was external validation and I didn't get it, and that is why I'm down. How can I validate myself now? And those patterns a lot of the time are unveiled, and like I said last week, you do start to question a lot of everything that you're doing. But I'm on the other side of it, and I can safely say, like, I adore the fact that I went through that journey, because I'm just not the same person. I do not attract the same people. I do not disrespect myself so much. I set boundaries. I adore the person that I am now because I really faced my truths, and it was really scary, but I did it, and I'm really proud of myself for doing it because I genuinely am not the same person I was. The purge can also be a big amount of grieving who you thought you were and grieving the life that you might have desired through that, because you'll realize the desire came from a wound. You may grieve a persona, you know, when you realize it's a persona. Again, I spoke earlier, but it may be that your persona is that, like, you're the productive gal, like you're really productive. Everyone comes to you because you're on it, you always doing something, you're always active. And when you realize that all of that was from a wound, you're grieving that productive girl. You're grieving the version of yourself that you no longer want to be, because you now know why you kept busy. And it may just feel like you genuinely, like, you can't be here anymore. You just want to shed that skin. You want it to go. Like, I definitely had a moment where I was looking in the mirror and I'm like, I don't recognize this girl anymore. I feel like this girl is like my old self, and I'm like in the purge. Like, I was in that part where I wasn't fully in my old life, I wasn't fully in my new life. I was in this liminal space, and that's kind of sometimes what a purge can feel like. It can feel a bit more like you're in the void than the liminal space, but sometimes towards the end you can feel like you're like coming out of that goo and you're not quite on the other side yet, and you have this irritation. Like, it's not irritated at you, you're not irritated at the universe, you're just irritated by the old identity that's still there, that you're like, I just can't do this anymore. So your purpose within this purge is to observe, to dissect the why, and to not beat yourself up. This purge is not about looking at your past self and being like, ugh. It's about knowing that she did everything to keep you safe, knowing that she was lost, she was stuck, knowing that this was the only thing she knew. So it's about witnessing, it's about observing, it's about understanding, but it's not about trying to fix, or trying to, all being hard on yourself. That's not the process or purpose of your path in this purge. It's just literally about knowing your wounds, observing where they come from, understanding why, so then you can move on to the next phase. Your role isn't to do more. Your role isn't to try and fix more or try and do more or try and give more, because again, that is the wound speaking. Your next purpose of this purge is to let the emotions move. I mean it when I really say this. You need to cry. You need to cry, cry, cry. You need to let those emotions, the stored emotions from all the shit and all the wounds, you need to let that out of your body. You need to sit with headphones and listen to 369 hertz. You need to let those emotions move. The other part of this is somatics. I do somatics once or twice a week. I did it more, I did it twice a week during like the purge part of my path, but I don't do that anymore. I do it once a week, and I still do it because it, like, my body does hold on to emotions more. I do have a lot of signs that, like, my nervous system does hold on to things. So I am doing that once a week, and I think somatics is something someone should always do, whether it's like a gentle acknowledgement of your body every morning. Like, I can feel my ankles, I go to my thighs, whatever, or it's like you follow along with a somatic flow. I used to do them on YouTube all the time, and I would follow those, and not everyone shakes, but if you do shake, don't stop it, just let it be, let your body shake it, because it genuinely is trying to release that trauma, those emotions out of your body. I once had the most intense somatic like shaking, and I remember it to this day. I was crying so uncontrollably I couldn't catch my breath, and I had to like breathe and stuff and just lie down and let myself flow. And it ended up me like really apologizing to myself. I was like hugging myself and I was saying, I'm so sorry, because ultimately, like, my whole life choices, I wasn't choosing me. And that was my realization moment of why I did everything, because I valued other people over myself. And this is why I say it always comes back to the Chiron wound. Whatever it comes from, it always kind of comes back to that. So let those emotions move through your body, let them flow out, because you will feel so much lighter when they do. Now, whilst you're doing all of this, whilst you're in the purge, doing the shadow work, doing the somatics, let the old identity melt. Do not try and hold on to people or anything in your life that is falling away, whether it's your own self, like maybe you are trying to hold on to something that brings you a lot of comfort, but you know deep down that it's not something you want to bring into your life, but you're like holding on to it. If it comes with struggle, then it shows like you're just like holding on to it so much. If it comes with this, not struggle, but like this push and pull, this like tenseness around that habit that you have or whatever it may be, if it's a person and it's becoming quite difficult and you just are so scared of them leaving or you leaving them, but you just know, like you deeply know that this isn't for you anymore, you have to just let that identity of you and whoever is tied to that identity melt. I said this a while ago in like a few videos. I think I said it back in the summer, but often when you're on your healing journey and often when you're doing all the shadow work and you're really like going through that healing, a lot of people around you will get triggered. A lot of people around you do not like the fact that you're trying to be better. They do not like the fact that you no longer want to be the person who stayed. You no longer want to be the person that didn't choose themselves. You no longer want to be the person that is okay with disrespect. So they will get triggered. They will either get triggered because ultimately, deeply, they want to also be on that journey with you and heal, or they get triggered because they were allowed to disrespect you before and now they're not. And that's really hard for them to be able to handle. So just be mindful and make sure to like take breaths before you react. It's a process. It really is a process. Like, this is why I've done it in the phases, because you you really can't skip from root all the way to the end. You need to go through every phase and it comes naturally. It's not like when I started this journey, I'm a Capricorn rising, so I really thought it was like a tick list. I was like, phase 1, the root, and I was like, okay, when am I done with the root? And I like didn't know, and when I went through it I realized it's not something that is tangible. Your body knows when to move on to the next phase. When I started to uncover all of my money wounds, I started to realize things about myself and why I did them, and nothing was really changing. And what I realized is I was keeping myself stuck in the purge because I thought that's what the healing process was. And my body was just like, no, you've learned all you need to now, move on. And as soon as I started the next phase, which is all about nervous system safety, that's when things started to evolve and change for me, because I was letting my body know that I'm in a new reality now. I was letting my body catch up. And before I was like trying to basically stay in the purge, and I thought you go straight from the purge to your new reality. And no, it is a process, especially if you have a lot of trauma and especially if you have a lot of nervous system dysregulation. You cannot go from root and purge, so core wounds and shadow work to new reality. It doesn't work like that. It is a ladder. It is not something that you just wake up the next day and you're like, oh, I've healed because I've done all the shadow work. It is a phase process. So anyway, I hope you really enjoyed this video. I love talking about this. I really feel like I accidentally fell into this money series, but I really love talking about it, so I hope you do too. Let me know in the comments what your Chiron placement is, your house and your sign, whether or not your whole sign or you use Placidus system, whichever one works best for you. I resonate with both of them, but when it comes to Chiron, I do resonate more with Placidus because of my lived life experiences. However, there is no wrong or right way. There is a way that you resonate with the most, and I respect both ways. I am learning Hellenistic astrology, so that is whole sign, and I adapt it to ways when it comes to Placidus. So yeah, let me know those below, and I'll give you a quick kind of really simple breakdown of what that might mean to you. Or even if you want me to comment down below maybe your Chiron placement and your Chiron sign, and I could actually put in a prompt for you like in the comments and stuff. So just let me know if that is something that you would want. If you do want to know more about my core wound reading, I have all the information below. And I want to thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next phase, which is the safety.